Let's talk now about what to do with the dollar, especially for teenagers and for kids. This is really important because this is one of the best places to start when you're like 15 years old, mid-teens. This is a great place, what to do with the dollar. Now here's the tendency on attitude, because attitude determines so much of our lives. What difference does it make if a child has $1 when you ask what should he do with it? It's only a child and it's only $1. But see, here's where it all begins. Your financial journey begins with what you do with the first dollar. That's where it begins. Now sure, you can do the wrong things and finally correct that, get on a better path, but it all begins on what you do with your resources. Jot this phrase down, it's one of the best for the weekend. Here's the 2 challenges of life. Number 1, the development of our full potential. That's challenge number 1. Challenge number 2 is the wise use of all our resources. That sums up life in general. The development of all of our potential and the wise use of all our resources. One of our resources is time, and we talked about that. Now we're going to talk about the wise resource called money. And let me share with you now a little plan. Because when I met Shof, and he asked me about my financial condition, he said, how much money have you saved and invested the last 6 years? And I said 0. He said, not a good number. Here's what I told him. If I had more money, I'd have a better plan. Now jot this down, because here's what he said. If you had a better plan, you would have more money. Next key phrase, it's not the amount that counts, it's the plan that counts. So let's start with something now as seemingly as small as $1. What should you do with it? Here's what we teach, teenagers especially. You should never spend more than 70 cents. Never spend more than 70 cents of each dollar you earn, or each dollar that comes your way, by gift or by labor. Now you've got to have some plan what to do with your dollar. I've developed this little plan simply for suggestion, and then you've got to do the rest, or revise it and do whatever you want to with it. But here's what I teach. Never spend more than 70 cents. You got to pick something, some number. This is the best one I could figure out. Now we've got another 10 cents, and another 10 cents, and another 10 cents, which is the 30 plus the 70, which is the full dollar. So we spend nothing more than 70 cents. Now what do we do with the other 30? Here's some of the most important information. 10 cents is for charity, or for church, or whatever worthy projects you think you might engage in. Here's one of the best things to teach kids, generosity. Because first we're going to teach abundance, to provide more than you could use for yourself. The be fruitful philosophy means to produce more than you need, so you have more than necessity, you have some to share. Some churches teach a 10%, a tithe they call it, which is fine. The key is to either administer this 10 cents yourself, or to give it to some institution, a church or whatever, and let them spread it around. Let them put it where it's needed. Now, if you're going to give to some charity or church, you must let them take you on the tour and show you where it goes. Okay, if you part with the money, let them give you the tour. Here's where the 10% goes if you're going to tithe. Because now that gives you great joy to give 10%. Because you say, hey, here's what it's doing, here's what it's doing, here's where it's going, here's who gets it. Now, the next 10 cents is called the use of capital. Here's what capital and capitalism is, so jot this down. Capital is any value you set aside. Capital is any value you set aside to be invested in an enterprise that brings value to the marketplace, hoping to make a profit. That's what capital and capitalism is. I can say it in one sentence. Capital is any value you set aside to be invested in an enterprise that brings value to the marketplace, hoping to make a profit. Now, the capital is the value you set aside. Taking capital and investing it in an enterprise and bringing the value to the marketplace we call capitalism. Now, who can understand this? First of all, the farmers understand it. Here's what seed corn is. It's capital. It's seed corn means the seed that you set aside to be planted in the ground, take care of in the summer, hoping to have a profit and a harvest in the fall. So the farmer sets aside his seed corn. Question, would he let his family eat it? No, this seed is not to be eaten. It's to be invested in the ground, to take a risk, cared for in the summer, harvested and multiplied in the fall. Now the same is true of some of your money. If you set aside, and I suggest, part of your capital should be set aside for an enterprise to show a profit. And we can teach kids the early fundamentals of capitalism. Now, once the kid has $1 profit, now what should he do with the dollar? This is the formula that I've come up with, what to do with that dollar. Don't spend more than 70 cents, 10 cents for church or charity, 10 cents to invest back into your business so that someday you can buy more than one bottle and get it a little cheaper so that when you sell it, you make a little more money. Now here's the other 10 cents. It's 10 cents that you invest and let someone else use it. This is called active capital, where you actually engage in the enterprise that makes a profit. Now another 10 cents is for passive capital, where you let someone use this 10 cents out of every dollar. You put it in a bank that pays interest. They use it and they pay you for the use of this money. That's called passive capital. So we've got active capital and passive capital. Maybe you invest this in a stock eventually if you have enough money, and the stock pays you dividends, and also there may be an increase in the value of the stock. So this is the little formula I come up with: 70, 10, 10, and 10. It's very simple, and kids can figure it out, kids can understand it.
I'm not sure anybody is taking enough risk from 20 to 30. Yeah. It is the most interesting thing that I've been thinking about, which is it is never more practical to be disproportionately risky than from 22 to 30, yet everybody goes the other way because now they're the real world and it's time to prove something to their parents, to themselves, to everybody else, and everybody goes conservative. It is a huge mistake. We need to flip it upside down. Everybody should go ham from 22 to 30 and do a ton of ridiculous and figure themselves out. But on your own dime, not your parents.
There's the parents clapping.
So how I think about it is you should go and be rogue and get to know yourself and taste from 22 to 30, but you have to live by the ramifications of doing that. And the cost of entry of that is living with 4 people in a studio apartment, eating dog food, and not having fancy shit. When you go and do that, but you're being subsidized by your parents, then you're living in a fake environment and you're super.
Tell us about failure and why it's important to fail.
I love it.
Yeah, because you mentioned that you love it.
I love it. I like micro failure. I hate macro failure, like death of your business is bad. But to me, you know what's funny? I'll use a boxing analogy. My favorite boxing, I watch a lot of boxing. I think boxing's a very interesting, and I'm super into mixed martial arts, but I grew up on boxing, I understand it better. And I like watching it because there's so many things that happen in boxing. First of all, what I love about boxing is there's nowhere to hide. You know, like it's super interesting, right? There's nowhere to hide. Number 2, there's a scenario in boxing that I love the most. For some reason, there's nothing more interesting to me than watching somebody get knocked down in the first round and then go on to win the fight easily. It's an interesting psyche, right? And I like that, and this is what I'm thinking about it, which is like, here's what's bad in boxing and in business. Going into a fight, getting knocked the fuck out in the first round and losing the match. Bad. Getting knocked down and then having the adversity to readjust to what you got caught on and navigating it to easily win a fight is remarkable. That's how I think about entrepreneurship. The reason so many people struggle with entrepreneurship is you have micro failures almost daily, and they're very in your face. You can't hide. And I like that. I like failure because I think I deserve it. I hate when people don't respect the game. When I fail, it means I f***ed up. And I like that because I think people get audacious. My number one thing that I hate about capitalism is that people use it and they love it and they're big capitalists and they love open market and competition and all that, and then they become 73 and they try to use all their money to protect their money. They're not willing to let a young lion eat them the way they ate somebody else. I hate when they try to manipulate it. That's what I love about sports. What I love about sports is when you're 36 and you were once the best player in the league, but now you're getting a little bit older and your body breaks down, you are forced to retire. The one thing that entrepreneurship and capitalism has to adjust to is once you get old and you're tired and you want to be on a yacht instead of working your you should lose some money because you're losing.
The bow too tightly strung is easily broken, says one of the proverbs. Balance is a gorgeous thing. So Be monomaniacal in your execution around your high-value targets, your HVTs, your mission plan, but also build in some rewards. And that's going to send a gorgeous message to your conscious and your subconscious mind that, hey, this daily practice of execution around my deliverables is a beautiful thing. And you create this thing called momentum. And the monk who sold his Ferrari, I went back and I saw this recently. I think there's a whole chapter on momentum. And you become like this. I love skiing. You start off small, but as you go down the slope, you pick up momentum. A lot of people say, Robin, where do I start? I want to start a new business. I want to become a better artist. I want to find the love of my life. I want to be a world-class creative. I want to multiply my financial life. Where do I start? You just start. You just start. There's great power in the start. And when you start, life starts supporting you.
Tell your kid, here's an impossible thing. Why don't you go out and fail? You say, here's something worth going after. Here's a step you could take that would push you beyond where you are, but that you also have a reasonably high probability of succeeding at, right? They call that
within a time frame.
Within some time frame. That's the other thing. You have to parameterize it with regards to time frame. That's right. And that puts you in the zone of proximal development. And that's a concept that was generated by a guy named Vygotsky. He was a Russian developmental psychologist and a smart one. It's where the idea of the zone comes from, to be in the zone. Yes. And when you're in the zone, you're expanding your skills in a manner that's intrinsically rewarding because you're succeeding. And so you want to set, if you're good to yourself, you think, okay, I need to set a goal, but I need to set a goal that someone as stupid and useless as me could probably attain if they put some effort into it. Right. And then you've got it perfectly, because it's not so high that it's grandiose or impossible that you fail necessarily and then justify your bitterness. It's like, well, I could do well, because that happens to people.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, it's like,
see this all the time.
You know, it's like, yes, exactly. Well, I set a goal and I didn't attain it, so I'm not going to set any more goals.
Right.
It's like, no, you set a goal that was inappropriate
for the time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right. You didn't calibrate it properly, and you're playing a trick on yourself because you wanted to fail so that you could justify not having to try.
And being a victim, yeah.
Which isn't helpful. You're still going to be a victim. It's like, there's no way out of that, man. Yeah. So, you know, because life is a challenge that in some sense can't be surmounted. So there's no way out of your problem, but there are certainly proper ways of dealing with it.
This is, I believe, the single biggest factor for most people that robs them of success. That you use what other people might say or think or be disappointed by as an excuse to not fully be yourself, to not fully go after what you want. The fear of disappointment for me turned me into a liar, and I didn't even realize it, because I was so worried about creating a scene or upsetting people or having people judge me that I started lying as a strategy. I invented it as a fourth grader. It didn't work in my life. It made every relationship suck. It made me miserable, but that's what happened. So when you think about your pattern of being afraid of disappointing people, of managing not making a scene, you don't need to find the exact trigger when it began. If you find just one and you understand kind of how old were you and what did you feel and what were you trying to manage, and then for me, what I say to myself is, oh, well, I have a lot of empathy for myself now because I understand why I developed that strategy. And now that I saw that it was a strategy that worked, because lying really worked when I was little, not so much when I was an adult. When I understand it was a strategy, I can now say, oh, well, that's a strategy that worked then. Now that I'm in this chapter of my life, I'm going to pick a different strategy.